folks. Let's see if we can't get this. Let's see if we can't get this started. Here we go.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
I really hate that they do that shit. Son of a bitch. But it is what it is. Good evening, one and all. Haven't been on for a while. Happy 4th of July. It's been an active day, active week, active last month. But tonight we're celebrating the United States 250th anniversary of their independence. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, which in the course of human events, it became necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and the nature of gods entitled them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organization its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate the governments long established should not be changed for light and transit causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same objective evidences a design to reduce them under absolution disposition. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patent sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations. All have given direct object and establishment of the absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let's fact be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operations till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimably to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies and placed unusual, uncomfortable, and dissent from the dispensatory of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them to the compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with mainly firmness in his divisions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time such as dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and conclusive within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to law for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices, and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out of their substance. He has kept among us in time of peace standing armies without consent of our legislators. He has effected it to render the military independent of the superior to the civil power. He has combined with others subject to the jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, given his assent to their acts and pretended legislator, for courting large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial for punishment for the murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us of many cases of the benefits of the trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to the tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing these free systems of English law in the neighboring provinces, establishing therein by arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render at once an example to fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislation, for declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abducted government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complement the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and total unworthy in head of the civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against our country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by the hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages who know rule of warfare, warfare, and his undistinguished destruction of all ages, sex, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may defy a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting its attendance to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislator to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justices and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondences. They too have been deaf to the voices of justice and the congeniality. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assemble, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, and that they are absolved of all allegiances to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of the right to do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection and divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Now, I know I messed up a couple times. It's been a long time since I've read that. That is the declaration. The actual words for the Declaration of Independence. Can't even say that. Fuck. I don't know if there's a lot of people out there who've actually read that whole thing in its entirety. The Declaration of Independence was just that. It was a letter to King George telling him to fuck off. We are of the colonies that were established going to going to do her own thing. Now, as anybody who knows anything knows, that started the Revolutionary War. It wasn't the Tea Party. Yep. I mean, conflicts were around at that point in time, but the that was what actually started the whole thing. And which is kind of funny, because the actual spark of that whole thing was April 19th, 1777, during the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And then a month later, the Second Continental Congress meets. And then we have the Battle of Bunker Hill. And the war officially started. The Declaration of Independence was July 4th, 1776. The war lasted until 1783, until the Treaty of Paris. But the spark that started the fight was on that spring morning in 1775. The Revolutionary War didn't start overnight. It was a result of growing tensions between Britain and the 13 American colonies over a decade, 1763 to 1775. Historians usually kind of group those causes in long terms, stuff like that. In 1770, March 5th, we had the Boston Massacre. British soldiers fired on a crowd, killing 5 colonists, used a powerful propaganda by Samuel Adams, love his beer, and Paul Revere. And then you had the Tea Act and the Boston Tea Party in 1773. Then you had the Intolerable Acts in 1774, British's harsh punishment for the Tea Party. Closed Boston Harbor, suspended Massachusetts self-government, allowed British officers to be tried in Britain, and it strengthened the Quartering Act. The war's immediate spark was Britain's attempt to seize colonial weapons at Lexington and Concord, April 19, 1775. However, the deeper causes was a clash between British imperial control and the colony's desire for self-government and equal right. We were done. The whole no taxation with representation became a rallying cry that summed up a lot of, again, it's all about the money. It's all about the money, economic and political grievances. And so, yeah. But here's the thing. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed, and it wasn't until 1789, March 4th, that the United States government actually began. And a month later, the first president of the United States was inaugurated on April 30th, 1789. 13 years. So we celebrate our Declaration of Independence. Historically, we are not celebrating 250 years of this nation's existence because it didn't exist until 1789. I'm not saying that lightly, and I'm not trying to, say that, oh my God, this is the worst thing, or that, it's a farce or anything like that. No, because July 4th, 1776 was a monumental day in history. It was a day that changed history that we know of today. Meaning, that's what brought up what we know as our United States of America, which I am proud to be. I'm not disparaging. I'm just saying, okay? Historically, our nation really didn't start until 1789. So, just to let you know, we still have a few more years for 250. Sorry to, bust your bubble, Trump. But so I was actually, thinking these last couple of days, what do I want to talk about? What do I want to do about this? Because while history and celebrations of our, coming to being a self-governed country, there's a lot of things that's happened since. Some magnificent, some magnanimous, some grandeur of things that this country has thrown and thrust upon the world, not just by choice, but by cause and by pure ingenuitive. And I had to think, my grandmother was born in 1901. I was born in 1972. And just in between those years, 71 years, she saw the advent of some technological and monetary marvels that in 1972 was, normal, but when she was born in 1901 was fantastic. I mean, fantastic. I want to say, if I remember correctly, yeah. So she was born in 1901. And so 1901 to so let me look at this. I want to get my calculator out to be correct. Just want 1901 minus 1776. So 125 years. 125 years had passed. Within that time, we had, let me see here, if I remember correctly, how many wars? Can't type tonight. I had all this stuff kind of thought out. So, from 1776 to 1991, besides the Revolutionary War, we had the Croisade War. It's undeclared naval with France. That was 1798 to 1800. You have the Barbary Wars, 1801 to 1805. The War of 1812. So if anybody ever asks you when the War of 1812 was fought, it was between 1812 and 1815. That was against Britain. Then you had the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848, territorial expansion. And then we had the Civil War. 1861 to 1865, and the Spanish American War, 1898. Uh, 7 major wars from the time we declared independence to, 1901. And after that, uh, we had we had seven more. I want to say the Philippine American War, 1899 to 1902. Yeah, World War One, 1917, 1918. Yeah, that's when we were involved. World War Two, 1941 to 1945. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953. The Vietnam War, 1965 to 1973. Uh, kind of broad all the way back to 1975. The Gulf Persian War, 1990 to 1991. Then we have the war in Afghanistan, 2020 to 2021. That was the longest we've ever had. The Iraq War, 2023 to 2011. And then you have the war on terror, which is ongoing. And then now you have the current Iran, if you want to call that the Iran war. So major conflicts that we have been in after the turn of the 19th century or 20th century. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm not going to really count the war on terror. Okay. Before that, we had 7. Now, that's just wars. That's just U.S. conflicts. And we can go into some inventions and stuff like that the U.S. has actually done because we have, had many. Um, uh, but the thing is, like I said, my grandmother was born in 1901. I was born in 1972. So, 126 years. Because my grandmother and I, she told me a lot of history, and it's very familiar when you're born there. You learn a lot of that stuff. You don't get into the weeds before then when you're my age in school. But after that, you kind of get into the weeds, and that's when they kind of school kind of deep dived into that stuff. Um, so I mean they touch on all the other type of stuff, mostly on those conflicts. That's why I brought them up. As well as economic advances and stuff like that. But it wasn't until 1901 uh, where we actually started to go boom. Okay, and 250 years, while it seems like it's a short time, I think I saw somebody on X list the histories as far as the oldest actual nations. We're like the youngest. The U.S. is like one of the youngest nations, the actual big nations in the world. We are by far one of the youngest nations in the world. I'm trying to remember. There's a country in Africa that's like you know close to like 3,000 years old, something like that. And then you've got your Asian countries. I think Japan and China and are they can date back further, but it's kind of hard just because of their different types of governments that's transpired and stuff like that. So it's hard to really establish. While there are countries and continents, it was kind of hard to do that. But the U.S. is relatively new in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scope of things. we are by far the youngest major country the world has ever seen. No, hold on. My daughter's sending me a text. And being the youngest nation in the world, in the grand scope of things, which we are still the youngest, grand or not, we are the youngest country. In 250 years, we have become the most dominant nation. And okay, well, hold on. I gotta pause this because my daughter needs me, so I will be right back. We're gonna go into intro. That's what happens. That's what happens. Holy cow. That's what happens when you have a teenager. She makes it seem so important that you have to rush off. And all they want to do is just say, hi. How in the hell does that work? Oh, I've got people watching on other watches. Isn't that kind of rude? You don't podcast on other people's podcasts. That's just rude. What? Oh, my setup is badass is what it is. What are you doing? I said get me one. I didn't say have it. Yeah, I'm live and my daughter interrupts me. That's what happens when you have a family. So where was I at? All right. So leading back to 1901. And the reason why I go back to 1901, and I'm not going back any further as far as development and stuff like that goes, is because that is a familiar thing. Top 2 achievements. I've already got some of this. So one of the major achievements that happened 2 years after my grandmother was born, Orville Wright first flew for 12 seconds, covering 120 feet. Later that day, Wilbur, his brother, flew for 59 seconds, covering 852 feet, and is universally recognized as the birth of the airplane. Earlier experiments, gliders, and stuff like that existed, but none achieved the controlled, powered flight. The Wright brothers are credited as the invention of the practical airplane. I can hear, so turn it down. So the year the airplane was done, that's 2 years. That's 2 years after my grandmother was born. In 1901, we had the first transatlantic radio transmission. 1905, Albert Einstein publishes his theory of special relativity. In 1908, Henry Ford introduces the Model T. Now, again, he's not the first to produce the automobile, he was the first to mass produce. A revolution begins. 1911 to 1920, the assembly line perfected by Ford and mass production begins. Einstein completes general relativity. In 1920, commercial radio broadcasting begins. Penicillin was discovered. In 1927, the first talking motion pictures. And Charles Lindbergh's solo transatlantic flight from 1903 to 1927. We went from flying, 800, what I say? Yeah, 120 feet to transatlantic. In 25 years. I mean, amazing. Again, 1928 penicillin. From 1931 to 1940, we developed the radar. We developed the first helicopter. We developed the first programmable computer. Nylon was invented. And of course, the ballpoint pen. Yeah. No more lead. 1942, first controlled nuclear chain reaction. 1945, the atomic bomb. 1947, transistor invented by Bell Labs. In 1950, we learned how to become in debt. The Diners Club credit card was created, and we learned how to become in debt. In 1951 to 1960, we started the space race, and computing began big time. DNA double helix structure discovered. 1957, Sputnik 1, first artificial satellite. It was Soviet Union. In 1960, laser was invented. From 61 to 70. In 1969, Apollo 11 moon landing. We went from the moon from 1903, going 120 feet, to 66 later, putting a man on the moon. Now, that was from the time my grandma was born, right before I was born. Those achievements. And that's worldwide. Wasn't just U.S., that was worldwide, but a lot of it had to do with the U.S. Major achievements. Major human achievements. Now, from when I was born, in 1971, the year before I was born, the first microprocessor was created by Intel. 1973, the first recombinant DNA was done. And then two things happened. In 1977. In 1977, the Apple II personal computer was brought to stage. And we launched the Voyager probe. Huge. Why do I say huge? In 1977, the Apple II personal computer is what brought us to where you're able to listen to me and I'm able to talk to you through this contraption. Yeah. 49 years. 49 years ago. And you have to understand that it took 27 years, 26 years from the time we went to 120 feet in the air to transatlantic flight. And it took 49 years for us to do this. The first time a computer was introduced. That's pretty cool. Personal computers became popularized with the IBM PC in 1991. Or 1981, sorry, not 1981. In 1983, the TCP/IP standard, first mobile phones commercially available, and the Internet Protocol was introduced. In 1989, not but 6 years later, Tim Berners-Lee invents the WWW, otherwise known as the World Wide Web, interconnected. Later that year, after 44 years, if not longer, fall of Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War. That was huge at that time. We had been living in a Cold War scare since the end of the World War II. And in 1989 to 1991, it ended. All of these things happened in my lifetime and in your lifetime for the most part, depending on when you were born, but short history. Because from 1901 to when I was born in 1972, we went from 120 feet in the air to landing on the moon to being able to blow the fuck up out of each and every one of us. Pretty crazy. And the funny thing about it is in 1990, the Human Genome Project begins. GPS becomes widely available, and we all hate it for it now. And in 1998, the International Space Station construction starts. And lo and behold, 1998, the thing we all refer to was founded, called Google. In 2001, the Human Genome Draft sequence was finished. 2004, another thing that we're so used to, Facebook launched. 2007, the first smartphone was introduced called the iPhone. In 2010, we had more gene developing, the CRISPR gene editing development, and it's still going on. A lot of medical stuff. 2011 to 2020, 2012, Higgs boson discovered Curiosity over the rover on Mars. We actually put a rover on Mars. 2010, we went from 1903 before, but nonetheless, mass produced. We're going to still give, Ford credit. Combustion engine to the introduction in 2010 of Tesla and reusable rockets by SpaceX. I remember that. That was awesome. And currently we are experiencing the wonders and the, you know, greatness of AI. That's what's happened just just in the last 126 years of this country. That's not to mention the other 124 years before that. And before that we were literally a wilderness. We were a wilderness because if I remember correctly, the last state um let's see if we can do that. Yeah, Hawaii was introduced as the last state of the U.S. in 1959. So we weren't even 50 states up until 1959. It's hard to conceive. It really is. Um, so yeah, I mean, this country has seen and done so much compared in its short amount of time. Um, and it is behoovement. It's behooving of me not to suggest that we're not going to do something incredibly awesome in the coming years. What that is, I don't know. I don't know. Why? Because I mean, come on. When my grandmother was born in 1901, I don't think anybody was thinking 67 years later we were going to be landing on the moon. And I honestly don't think anybody thought, 125 years later, we were talking about putting a man on Mars. Because that's what we're talking about doing. I don't think that was conceivable in 1901, let alone in 1776. I don't think anybody can argue that while there are other good countries in this world, the U.S. of A, the United States of America, is by far, to current historical standards, one of the greatest countries that this world has ever seen. Now, I'm not going to say, again, that we are definitely not the longest lived, because we're not. And I'm not going to say that we are the most historical that the world has ever seen. We're pretty close. But when you got thousands of years compared to 250 years, I think we still have some stuff to touch on. But if you think about it as a ratio, the U.S. has achieved in the short amount of time that it's been around and has not only helped develop the rest of the world and introduce things to the rest of the world to make their lives better. Can't say that about a lot of other. Can't really say that about a lot. I mean, just can't. Now, have we done some bad things? Yeah. What country hasn't? We're people. We make mistakes. We, choose this over that. It's not unusual. It's not uncommon. If you look historically. But the funny thing about it that I was thinking about the other day is we're not a conquering people. We're not. If we were a conquering people and we had the aspirations of an empire like Britain or Spain or France or Rome or the Greeks, or any of the earlier quote unquote empires, of which there were many. That's the thing about the US. The United States were never a conquering nation. Meaning that we weren't going to come in, kick your ass, take you over, subject you to our laws and our rules with an iron fist, subjugate you to our laws and our culture. We would, we never did that. Never once has the U.S. ever done that. Now, can I say that we weren't heavy-handed in what we wanted you to do? Yeah, we were. Yes, we have been. Yes, we are. But it wasn't a conquering nation type of thing. I mean, take Britain and India. Britain conquered a majority of the known world there for a while under British rule. The British Empire was freaking huge for a small little itty bitty island. They were huge. Their empire was vast. We have 48 landlocked states and 2 others with a couple subsidiaries, outliers out there. We're not nation builders. And when I mean we're not nation builders, I mean we're not conquerors. We're not going to bring you into our fold and say you are under our purview. Which is kind of funny in a way, because it's what we seem to be accused of sometimes, of imperialistic and fascist rule, which we're totally not. Far from it. And it's funny to listen to those who think it is. We have by far the greatest economical system in the world. And when I say that, I'm not saying it is 100% perfect. We do not live in a utopia here in the U.S. We don't. It's not a utopia. But it's better than any other country out there. Especially compared to our size. Now, if you want to compare, a country that is the same size as our low to medium sized state, then yeah. I mean, again, if you're going to compare the United States to, say, Norway or Finland or something like that, well, you need to compare, I don't know, Texas and California individually compared to those countries, not the entire state. And the reason why I say that is because the entire country, while it's so grandiose, it's fair to compare those 2 states to those type of countries. Does that make sense? So yeah, we are, and this is well, yes, I am a U.S. citizen. Yes, I am a proud citizen of this country, born and raised in this country. patriotic to the core. Okay. At the same time, at no point in time will I say we're 100% perfect. At no point in time will I say that, you know, we had no flaws or no faults at all. Because as people, human beings, we are imperfect. And therefore, such, we, in our system of government, elect imperfect people to govern imperfect people. So you got imperfect people governing imperfect people. You're going to have imperfect situations come up. That is the nature of the beast, to be completely honest with you. But we've done better than most. Over the course of our history, we've righted some wrongs. We have made gains in both civil and political discourse, even though we're kind of stepping back a little bit on both in this generation. Still haven't figured out why, how, or when, but yeah. So yeah, this is a pretty freaking cool country to live in. And what's cool is, especially during this World Cup, you see a lot of foreigners out there who are experiencing the U.S. in its entirety, in its full, not just propaganda propagated by the mainstream news that they are able to envelop. They're starting to realize, and the world is starting to realize, as far as this World Cup goes, the United States of America is not its politics. It's not. It's part of it. It is, you know, a very small part of it, to be honest with you. It seems like it's a big thing because it's always thrown out in the news. But the average person does the same thing that any average person anywhere in the world does. We get up in the morning or at night, depending on your shift. We get ourselves ready. We go to work. Then we come home. If you're not a stay-at-home mom, if you are a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, you know, the other person comes home, spends time with each other. Yeah. It's the same thing. Hold on for a second. My dog's going crazy. My dog is going crazy. And if you can't hear him in the background, I'm sure you can. I know I can. But yeah, it is by far one of the best things that that anybody can actually hope to strive for. Really, to be honest with you, and then I'm not bragging. This is not somebody who is bragging about their country, because while there are other people out there and stuff like that, the actual average U.S. citizen, the ordinary Joe, 70-85% of us, they get up and go to work. Then they come home. And they do the best they can. And they, you know, enjoy their life. And they overcome obstacles. And they take care of the drama that's in their individual lives. They don't care about the politics. They don't care about, I mean, they do to some degree. But usually that degree is minuscule compared to, you know, the daily ongoings of our world. To be honest with you, it is by far one of those things where, you know, I am surprised and amazed at all the stuff that I see on, online, and they and witness throughout the day everybody else. Because it's very hard for me to believe that, all the people that I drive past every day, Monday through Friday, um, or whatever, um, they're consumed by the politics. Whereas everybody outside of the U.S. think that's all that we are, is we're just consumed by our politics. And, you know, just really isn't true. They're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing around the world. Trying to work, trying to survive, trying to make their lives a little bit better here and there. Now, our poor live better than most rich people in other countries. That's a fact. Um, I mean, our level of poor is, in today's calculations, pretty sick when it comes to other countries in this world who are actually poor. I mean, our level of poor is pretty freaking high compared to the world's, which is a testament to our country. When our poor people are fat and they have luxuries beyond what, a normal, person would expect it to be, yeah, we're doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. And I don't think I don't think that anybody who listens to my tribe or listen to anybody else's tribe online who, want to follow into that, that that line of political thought and thinks and stuff like that, um, is bad. Um, it's always good to be informed. I want you to be informed. I want you to, know the history. I want you to know the past, and I want you to know what's going on in the present, so you can understand and decide what's going on in the future. Um, but I think that going forward for the next 250 years, I will. I'm going to hope and pray that we can get back to some semblance of camaraderie and some semblance of sanity. And what I mean by that, the right decorum, to me, uh, shows a level of um, sophistication that we've lost over the years. And, that should be expected when you have, the opening up of people being able to communicate with each other over a broad area, over a broad subject of discussions and stuff like that. Um, and our culture has evolved tremendously as well. But I'm hoping and I pray, at least from my daughter's generation, and hopefully, those further, that we can get back to a little semblance of, decorum, a little sensibility, um, respect, instead of this instant reaction of emotion, which we see on a regular basis. And you can call the names whatever you want to call them. But you know what I'm talking about if you have any minute sense of intelligence, that we have become such a reactionary populace of our feelings and our you know our sensitive reactions to anything and everything that's around us. I think that I hope and I pray that the next 50 years, not only do we land on Mars, not only do we solve world hunger, not only do we solve the energy situation that is petroleum, to where we can actually have some sort of viable and reliable, renewable energy. Hopefully, nuclear will have a new dawn. Maybe cold fusion in the near future will be a thing. I'm not too afraid of AI. The reason why is because of the way it's designed and stuff like that. I don't see a Terminator type of thing going on there. But I do believe that it will help us collect, gather, and enable information from across a broad spectrum of things and people to help solve some of today's problems, such as cancer, such as homelessness, such as hunger, such as blah 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 blah. I hope our education gets back to a level that was 50 years ago, almost 100 years ago, because our education 100 years ago was 10 times better than what it is today. I hope as a society we are able to grow in a way to where we're not going to let psyops and the media dictate what we think. And I think the internet, as well as AI, as well as some other types of bodies of media, is going to help foster that, to where we are no longer going to be a slave to corporate media bullshit that they feed us, because it's going to be too quick and too easy to debunk whatever they throw out. I hope that journalism actually becomes journalism again, instead of opinion. I hope the 24 hours, 7 days a week news networks go beyond and are done. Nobody needs news 24/7. We don't. We need 3 hours a night. That's it. You can do a noon, you can do a 5, and you can do a 10 o'clock. You don't need 24 hours of news. You really don't. Because then all you're doing is just feeding into opinion. And that's not journalism. That's just opinion shows. And might as well just call it opinion shows, which, honestly, YouTube, Rumble, all these places are taking that over, because there's a lot broader and a lot better opinions than paid actors on the normal news media, because that's what they are. They're just paid actors. They read off a script. They might have some opinions, but most of them are just script readers and bullshit like that. Most of it's going to become like what AM radio was, free thinking, but it's going to be much less regulated, and it's going to be more flowing, to where you're actually going to be able to hear opinions and stuff like that, and actually make a decision and stuff like that. That's still going to happen. I think it's going to actually grow bigger and bigger and bigger. I hope Hollywood gets their asses out of their heads out of their asses and actually start producing some decent movies that I want to go pay to go watch. I haven't seen an actual movie in a movie theater. I want to say 2018 maybe. Yeah. 2018 was when I last saw a major movie on a major movie theater. And I was actually thinking about going and seeing a movie this past weekend. Um and after everything that I've read and heard, it made me go like, yeah, no, I'll just wait until it comes out on streaming service and I'll watch it on my TV instead of pay for it and go see it on the big screen, which, I'm sure the experience and stuff like that. I get that. I love movies. But at the same time, yeah, I'm not going to pay for it. No, not going to do it. So I'll just wait until it comes out in streaming service and I'll watch it, and it could not be good. I don't know. Now, I will say I really do wish um the show that I watched the other night was a little bit more hyped and a little bit more advertised, because I probably would have reconsidered going and seeing that movie on the big screen, because we just watched what was that movie that I just watched the other day, the Home Run or Hail Mary Project. Um, that was a great movie. Great movie. Great storytelling. Great acting. Great interaction with characters. Character building. It was by far one of the better movies that I've seen in a long time. Um, and I would have enjoyed that on the big screen. I think I would have enjoyed that on the big screen. But with the desolation and the delusion of how Hollywood has gotten so far, you know, missed it. I'm sure it was out on screens, but I wasn't really, really gonna do it. There's not really been a lot of movies out there that have been worthy of us paying and going seeing things when you can wait for it to see it on your 75, 85-inch television in your bed in your living room. You know what I'm saying? Um, I hope sports becomes entertainment again for competition and not drama filled with politics and infighting. Um, I think we're done with the whole NFL bullshit. I think they're kind of done with that. I think they learned their lesson. Um, NBA, yeah, they're kind of there. WNBA, still not there. Um, but after this World Cup, I will say, I think the U.S. might be like, this football thing, aka soccer, it's a pretty cool sport. I mean, seriously, if you take hockey and put it on grass, it's kind of the same thing. Really is. It's the exact same sport to some degree, except for one's on ice, one's on grass. One uses foot, the other one uses sticks. But the concept, the field is kind of the same. And we love our hockey. I think we could get a little bit involved in soccer too, or football. Let's watch some stuff on the pitch. Yeah. So in the next 50 years of this country, depending on the direction that we come on, I hope that my daughter has a country that is as viable and as successful and as rewarding as it has been for the last 250 years. Let's see, where am I at? Where's my cursor at? I know I'm quiet because I'm just thinking, and trying to decide. I'm thankful. I'm thankful to live in this country. I'm thankful to live in a country that gives me the freedom to do this, to give me the freedom to get up and actually go make a living and try and make a better world and a better life for myself and my family. And to have the disagreements and have the conflicts that we have on a daily basis with each other online, uh, our disagreements and our arguments and stuff like that, and not be fearful that somebody's going to knock down the door and arrest me for my thoughts and my feelings. We're not there yet. And I hope and pray that this country never does. It'll be a sad, sad day. It'll be a sad, sad day if it happens like that. Because that's not what we're based on. And, I want to say, if that ever does, the U.S. citizens should vote the right to kick that government out and overthrow it. Yeah. Hope it never happens. So happy birthday. Happy birthday, U.S. Until next time, um, we're going to hope for the best. Good night and God bless. And God bless you.